Good evening. We're going to get started. Thank you all for braving the rain and the wind and making it out here. We are sure you're not going to be sorry. This is our final D3 Fashion Talk this season at Fashion Forward, and it is indeed a very interesting one. Building a brand that lasts, the Azza Fahmy story. I will introduce our moderator, Allison Tay, who's editor-in-chief of Grazia magazine, and let her take the stage and introduce our esteemed speaker. Thank you and enjoy.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for joining us tonight. The world's most stylish women, from Queen Rania to Rihanna, have been adorned by Azza Fahmy jewellery. Since starting the handcrafted jewellery empire, which celebrates culture and heritage in Cairo in 1969, Azza has gone on to be named one of Egypt's most influential women. Now, at 74, she's recently been described in an interview with the Telegraph newspaper as an exceptional woman who makes exceptional jewels in exceptional circumstances. I am absolutely thrilled to have her daughter, Amina Ghali, with me today.
Hi, Allison.
Hello, who joined the family business 12 years ago to explore this fascinating idea. An exceptional woman who makes exceptional jewels in exceptional circumstances. That is quite the description. I'd love to know more about that.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining me. I'm sorry, I'm a bit nervous. I'm not used to public speaking, so I do apologize. I'd like to tell you a bit more about how, as a brand, we started. My mother graduated from the Faculty of Fine Arts. She had a degree in interior decorating, but she knew that something was off with what she was doing. She had a government job. She used to design children's books. And she went to the first international Cairo book fair, and she came across this book that actually cost her entire salary. And it was in German. It was about medieval jewelry. But you know when they say, fate calls? And literally her heart started having palpitations, and she knew right away this is exactly what she wants to do. She bought the book, even though literally it was all she could afford. She went back and started talking to her family about, I'm going to be in the headlines. I'm going to have international presence. Everyone's going to know me. And of course, the entire family went, yes, whatever. And she, unfortunately, at the time in Egypt, we didn't have the platform that would offer education, or she didn't know what to do. You have to think also, this is a woman who was 22, 23 years old. It was 1969. The jewelry industry is a male-dominated industry till today. Yes, of course, there's a lot of women that are getting into it, but think back in the 60s, it was actually not just an industry. It was not even perceived as something prestigious that she can do as a college graduate. But she followed her dream. She went to Egypt's one of the oldest markets in the world. It's called Khan Khalili. And she started knocking on doors and saying, I want to learn how to make jewelry. And of course, as a college graduate and being Khan Khalili in a male-dominated industry, everyone just slapped the door and said, we're not interested. And then eventually, a fantastic man who was her teacher and master for 2 years, Hagga Said, he just got intrigued by this college woman who wanted to learn. So for 2 years, she learned how to make jewelry with her own hand. Then after a while, having the background of a university degree, she felt like whatever she wanted to design just exceeded what she could physically do with her hand, and her master could not offer it anymore. He could not give her anything more. So she went to the British Council, and they gave her a scholarship for 6 months in London. But actually, when she graduated from London, they awarded her a degree as if she had been there for 3 years. They said the effort and the work she had done in 6 months is what a student would do in 3 years. She went home, she opened her first workshop. Just to give you a brief, the Azza Fahmy jewelry capital was 3 Egyptian pounds, which is about 30 pence. This is what my mother started with. And today we are an organization. We employ 285 employees. We have 18 outlets. I am second generation, like Allison had said, into the business. I joined in 2005. And I have my story of my own as well. But I think with her, it's so challenging following your dreams. especially when you're perhaps caught up in following what everyone is telling you to do. And I really admire that about her.
That's an incredible story. Thank you for sharing it with us. What would you say sets the Azza Fahmy aesthetic apart from those of your contemporaries?
I think because we're a brand that has a story, it makes us, I think, very different. We're a cultural inspired brand, and people think that we're inspired just by the Middle East and Egypt, but actually, for 40 years, we're actually in 2019 would be celebrating Azza Fahmy for 50 years. We've done collections inspired by Mexico, Peru, Nepal, India, Africa, and we really do believe that to revive heritage, a lot of people write books, some sing songs, some write poetry, but we actually create jewelry. So I think what makes us different is that when you look at our pieces, every piece that we do will have a story, will have a message, will have history. And we focus so much on our research. We sometimes, like, we have certain collections that were 10 years in research. Like the piece that I'm wearing, we actually started researching in 2001 and we launched it in 2011. So it's a really long time just to get, the hang of things.
Tell me the moment you realised that you were going to follow your mother's footsteps.
So my mother was a single mother, and she dragged my sister and I everywhere she went. So whenever there was an exhibition, we couldn't afford at the time to take our employees. So my mother would decide that we were her employees. And we travel with her and would help to set up the booth, put tickets, sell, do everything pretty much. So my sister and I had a natural art inclination. But it wasn't until I decided that I definitely want to pursue that. I applied to an art college in Birmingham, but they said I was too young to get accepted. I had to wait one more year before I can go. So I went to Florence. I joined a contemporary jewelry school called Alchemia. Fantastic, fantastic school. You can imagine Florence, little school. And they actually accepted me by mistake. They read on my application that I was 27 when I was 17. So I was literally, you can imagine this, an Egyptian girl back in 2000 sitting amongst people who were 25 to 40. And I'm just like their little baby sitting amongst them. And I was piercing out my first ring. It was this really silly copper crown that I still have. It looks ridiculous, really. And I literally, as my teacher was talking, I told him, sorry, just 1 second, got up, dialed my mother on the phone. I think I found exactly what I want to do. And it was my moment of fate. I knew this was it. Yet, my mother kept pushing me, saying, no, I don't want you to feel pressured that because I do jewelry, you have to do jewelry. I want you to try other things. So I went to Birmingham and did 1 year of foundation where I tried different arts, whether it was fashion photography, multimedia, so on and so forth. But I was still very much like, no, I knew it, it was that.
So you were raised around jewelry.
Yes, pretty much.
Tell me your earliest childhood memory.
Okay, it's really embarrassing. So I was 4 years old, and for some reason I wanted to impress my mother. So she has in her bedroom this really beautiful 18th century Egyptian jewelry drawn. And I stood there in front of it all day while she was at work, and I started to copy it. And when she came home, I tried to claim that it was my own design, which is really, really embarrassing. But she looked at me, and it's wonderful how mothers can be encouraging regardless. Instead of giving me like, oh, you're lying, this is obviously an 18th century piece. She just looked at me and she said, you're going to be a wonderful designer. I'm very proud of you. But that is my earliest memory of jewelry, or loving jewelry.
It's a beautiful memory. What qualities do you feel you and your mother share? And what do you think your differences are?
I'd have to say that over the years, it's changed quite a lot. I think as any brand, you have to kind of evolve. And having lived in Europe for 6 years, I was very fascinated by everything contemporary. And my mother, being who she is, she was fascinated by everything that came from our region, or anything that had history and heritage. And we would disagree constantly, saying, this is so old-fashioned. And she would say, this, you can't even wear that. Like, it's all these like super massive contemporary pieces that no one can even wear. But over time, we just started bridging that gap and marrying the two cultures together to come up with a new product. And actually, I'm really not lying when I say we barely disagree now, because it's not a competition and it's not who will have the last say or who's right and who's wrong. Everything has to be done with so much passion and so much work that if we disagree on a particular direction, we're going to work together until we find a common ground where we're both very comfortable.
Now, earlier on, you told us about the challenges your mother faced when she started out, being a woman in a male-dominated industry, having doors slammed in her face. What are the challenges that you face? How are they different?
It's there's a lot of challenges to become, like I said, like I mentioned, we've been around since 1969. And I think the challenges that you face today is how to always remain ahead. Because the world is evolving so fast. It's like, how do you stay ahead? There's so much going on. And I think the trick here is to always, first of all, not have a lot of resistance. The second, when you see that the world is evolving into something new, you can't just keep saying, no, but this is who I am. I'm never going to change my mind. They have to change. There's no point. But you also, having said that, you also have to remain true to yourself and not bend over so much, or else somewhere along the way, you're going to lose your identity and you have no idea where you started. And another thing I think one of the challenges is always that the second you say, I've learned it all, or I know it all, I think that is the day that your brand or your whatever it is you're going to work with is going to start declining. I appreciate my mother. As you said, she is 74 years old. Every year, she travels to learn new jewelry courses. She's still so eager to learn. And she brings that energy back onto the company, where every year we sit together as a group and we say, how can I make it better? We watched a documentary as part of our PR training about this Japanese sushi maker, a Michelin star in Japan, in a subway. And the guy, for 30 years, he only stirs rice. That's all he does. And every day for 30 years, he goes to his work and he says, how can I make it better today? And when you have that kind of thing that you want to evolve all the time, or if you look at our previous designs to where we are today, we've come a super long way. Not that one is necessarily better than the other, it's just as the world evolved, we evolved as well. So I think to stay ahead of the world, this is the kind of challenges that you have to face. And I think one of the most important thing is never have too much ego to ask for help. Because a lot of people, I think, get stuck in a place where they feel like, I'm too good for this, I can't ask because it would mean that I'm so-and-so. I think if you don't know, ask. There's nothing too small or of a challenge. You'd be very surprised that from the smallest of business to the biggest of business, we're all facing the same thing, just on different magnitudes. That's it.
Now, I'm sure, like everyone else here, we're all transfixed, not only by the jewellery that you're wearing, but the jewellery behind us on the screens. I would absolutely love to know more about your creative process and how it all comes together.
So we have a very long process. It's about 2 to 3 years in the making for a small collection. And we work actually with a very strong group of trend forecasters and trend stylists just to try and stay ahead of the trend. And the way it works is, in order for you to predict what's going to be in trend, as they say, in 3 years, you have to analyze what's going on in the world. And it has nothing to do with jewelry. I have to look at socially, economically, what's going on in the movie industries, which author is writing what, museums, exhibitions. Then I take it down to fashion weeks and start to analyze catwalks because, of course, I'm sure as you all know, fashion is very much related to jewelry. Whatever you're going to wear, you have to put something on that matches. And then we start slowly, and then you come up with 5, 6 trends that are very key, and you start taking that into how does that fit the Azza Fahmy jewelry? How can I make it mine? How can I make it different? How can I put my love and effort into this? Then, of course, you go through a lengthy process of sketching and putting collections together. It takes us about 8 months to do our prototypes because we have such intricate pieces. And then it goes into the cycle of production, distribution, etc.
That's fascinating. Now, in 1969, how would your mother have done it?
She did whatever she wanted. She just didn't care.
How about now?
She still does whatever she wants. She still doesn't care.
Earlier on. You talked about Peru, Mexico. We all know that culture and heritage is super, super important to the Azza Fahmy story. We've talked about fashion weeks, movies, different kind of influences. Is there anything else? Any other inspirations that feed into the mix?
It's very important, and I think one thing that we've managed to learn is get inspired by everything. Numerous number of times I'd be sitting in a restaurant. It's actually like we were having dinner, I think it was about a long time ago, and there was a coaster sitting on the table that just had a beautiful motif on it. And I had to get up, leave my dinner, and go up and say, can I borrow this coaster? Because all I could see was earrings. So when someone asks me where I draw my inspiration, there isn't a single thing that I don't draw inspiration from. Whether it's architecture, sculpture, paintings, music. It could be a line from a poem. It could be something on the rug that I think is very interesting that can go on to our jewelry. I mean, the piece I'm wearing, I think we have an image of it. Farah, can you just get the Nekhbet image, please? I just want to tell you that even though this is this is our pictorial, this one, from the Pharaonic collection in 2012, but actually all the motifs are prehistoric. So these pieces are dated, just go back, sorry. They're dated more than 20,000 years ago, those motifs we have on the necklaces. And they were actually put on clays and plates and cutlery. It's something completely not related to jewelry. But what we saw was the vulture that used to stand on Isis' head, Queen Isis' head. It would be beautiful to have something that came from even a longer period that could be put there. So the inspiration is just everywhere.
That's wonderful. Now, the industry is full of daughters who have followed their mothers into fashion. Angela Massoni,
Yes.
Delfina de la Tres Fendi, they're just two that I've spoken to recently and discussed this with, and I'm completely fascinated by it. What I found was mixed emotions, a kind of tension between wanting to follow their own creative paths and also coping with the challenge, I suppose, of making a heritage brand relevant to today's consumer. What's your experience?
I think the misconception is that people think I got it really easy. All they see is you're second generation into established brands, you're so lucky, you must have had it so easy. And I have to say, I count my blessings every single day for what I've been offered. But easy is not a word I can describe. First of all, I think it's much easier, even though it has its own challenges, to start up a business than to go into an established one. Because there is automatically a benchmark that you cannot drop below. And also, when I joined in 2005, my mother at least had a 35-year head start. So to me, I had to catch up pretty fast. And at the beginning, you're kind of stuck into doing what she was doing because you're still very scared to have your own identity, because you go into the mother, like you said, you go into the mother-daughter relationship of you want to honor this woman who pretty much gave you everything. You want to honor the brand that is offering you a platform. But you also want to have an identity. Mm-hmm. And it takes a very long time. It's years of struggle. Because working with family is the most beautiful thing you can ever do, but it's also the most challenging thing you can ever do. You cannot switch off. There's always the emotional aspect that goes into mm-hmm. it. So when people tell me you've had it pretty easy, I tell them, well, I finished my degree in 2005, and this is when I joined. For the first 3 years, I was not allowed to do jewelry, even though I had studied it. My bachelor's degree is in jewelry design and silversmithing. I had to start literally on the bottom of the ladder. I went 3 years in different departments, learning everything there is to need to know about the business. And I would secretly design, a few pieces across here and there. Mm-hmm. But I remember countless sessions that I'd be attending the amendment sessions that my mother holds every day at our workshop back home. And it would have more than 30 people, from draftsmen to engineers to workers. And if I just talk, she'd look at me like, who are you to give an opinion, you know? Because to her, it's like, you have to earn your spot. This is not given to you. This you have to earn. To the extent that I actually referred to my mother as madam back home. I cannot call her mother. It was just, she made sure that my sister and my sister's the managing director of our company as well. She just made sure that she didn't want people to think, oh, you know, this is Azza Fahmy's daughter, naturally she took it because she's her daughter. She had to make me prove that I was worth it.
Do you still call her madam?
Occasionally. I call her AF, actually, which is just an abbreviation for Azza Fahmy.
That's something that we discussed previously, another one of the challenges that you faced when you first started and joined the company was that you were asked, are you as good as your mother?
Yes. I had that question for about 6-7 years. The Egyptian community and the Arab community is very, very small. So every time I went out and they knew that I was my mother's daughter, the natural question was, are you good as your mom? And it's a really embarrassing question because you don't know how to answer. I think now my work speaks for itself. I don't need to answer that question anymore. Everyone can see what I've done for the business, and that brings me a lot of joy and a lot of pride. So.
Now, what are the most important lessons that your mother's taught you about jewellery, about business, and about life?
I think about jewellery is to follow what you want to do, even if the world is moving towards a particular direction, and always get inspired by everything and anything, and work on yourself all the time. In terms of business, that have no ego. There's nothing wrong with someone telling you that they don't like your work or that they don't like this piece, and that it's a work in progress. Every time you think you've got it, you haven't. It's literally a work in progress. And always to actually look at the next generation, because my mother is a one generation. The consultants that came to help bring this brand together were all in their 50s and 60s, so they were slightly younger than my mother. My sister is in her late 30s, and we have our entire PR department girls sitting here who are in early 20s, completely different generation. I'm in my 30s. And actually, we hire a lot of interns who are between ages 15 and 18, even if they're still in school, because we want to pick on Generation Z's thinking and where they're going forward. They are the future. And as for life, I think it's always important to follow your heart and be true to who you are. There's no point in pretending that you're anyone else. It just doesn't work. You're unique on your own. There's no two yous of you. So there's no point in trying to be another you.
That's a great lesson. Now, we talked about your sister Fatima, the MD of the company. I would love to know what goes on around the dinner table, what kind of conversations happen.
We have this rule at home: we don't bring home to work, and we don't bring work to home. So whatever happens in the business stays in the business. Whatever happens at home stays at home, because at one point before my sister and I got married, we were all living under the same roof. So if we'd had our arguments at work for whatever reason, we had to come home and actually just completely switch off and be daughters. Same goes the other way around. Of course, every once in a while, you have too much of an emotional turmoil that you say, right, I can't do this. But our rule is that, we don't discuss business. We discuss what's only personal, because we really value family time. So family time is family time. Business time, we can discuss at the office.
So how do you settle disagreements as a family in the office?
We're actually, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I think we're quite progressive in that sense. So we always hire other people. We're a very, very spiritual family. We've been meditating since 2003. So we always meditate together. That actually brings a lot of harmony between us. But when we feel like there's a disagreement that we can't solve, and we're starting to feel like there's emotions building up, we actually get someone to be a mediator. Someone who has no inclination to go to like, oh, she's my friend, or she's my this, and we just talk and talk. It's like therapy, but in business. And then they can handle the disagreement, and because the other person who's going in, we listen, we don't hear. There's a very big difference between them. So when we go into the whatever therapy I don't want to say therapy, like whatever business meeting we're doing, we go into with the energy of we're here to listen. And if I'm listening and I think I'm wrong, then there's no point in me insisting. And and then it's finished.
So everybody's here to find out more about how to build a brand that lasts. Is there a secret?
I think to start with, there's so much going on. I mean, I can talk about, for instance, what's going on today. There's a lot of social media madness that's going on. And I think it's going back to the point where I said no resistance. If you looked at luxury brands 10 years ago, they wouldn't be caught on any of the social media platforms. It's just
Not even 10.
Yeah, possibly, probably 7.
Maybe 10 minutes, some of them.
So, yeah, but it was just unheard of, because they could not see how luxury can be reflected on social media. But if those brands have not changed that idea of, we're luxury, we can't get into this, they would be left behind, if not left behind, and probably unheard of by the new generation. So this is a perfect example of how you have to mold yourself to what's going on. But having said that, for instance, a lot of social influencers are, this is what a lot of brands are targeting these days. And to be quite frank, we struggle with that, because for us, life is about, or the brand is about partnership. It's not about, oh, okay, so this person has 2 million followers, so as a brand, I'm just going to run to her. Because then people feel that it's not genuine. They just feel like it's endorsed. Whether it's a celebrity or social media influencer or media influencer, I think it's just you find someone that you connect with as a brand. And then when you meet that person, you kind of hope that he feels the same way about you as you feel about them. And I think in life, you have 2 ways of doing organizations. They either call it the pyramid organization or pyramid scheme, not scheme, pyramid structure organization, where you have a boss on top, 2 under, and then from 2 to 6, from 6 to 10, and then you have, the bottom of the pyramid, and everything basically trickles down from the boss on the way down. Or you have the other kind of organization, which is the style we prefer to work with, which is the tree organization. That every person in the company is as important as the next person. So you cannot tell what's more important, the roots or the branch or the trunk or the leaves. They're equally important. And one is actually not necessarily better than the other. They work differently. So the way we've chosen is that it's very important for us to see that something that would last is that you partner up with the right people and not being scared to say, right, raise your hand and say, I actually don't know how to do this. My sister does a lot of mentoring for a lot of brands from a business and marketing perspective. And a lot of the times you find someone that comes up to her and says, right, I've got this amount of cash and I don't know what to do. And it's a question of, let me review with you everything, and then I would advise you, because at one point we were there, and unfortunately we didn't have anyone to help us out. So
it's really, I think we'll go on more to talk about how else the brand is giving back to the community. But we've talked about work not being scared to evolve. And from what you're saying, influencers may... I know, right? From what you're saying, influencers may not be necessarily the most natural answer for you. What would be... We talked about your Generation Z interns. What other things are you doing to kind of make the brand relevant to today's consumer? How are you speaking to today's consumer as a brand?
I think we're speaking to the consumer in many different ways. So first of all, we have many collections across Azza Fahmy that I think each would have its own style and its own, story. But also what we do is that we engage very much into the community, and we think that's quite important. So one of the earliest, we used to, from 30 years ago, we would always associate ourselves with a charitable community, whether it was diabetes, whether it was children's cancer, the Chain of Hope Foundation for Sir Magdi Yaoub. And after a while, we felt that even though it was great designing jewelry pieces and selling it in our boutiques and then giving the money or the revenues to these organizations, we actually wanted to work on education. So we initially we did a capsule collection, sold that, and gave the money to an education fund that helped other startup businesses and entrepreneurs to head up their business. But then we moved on to say, as a company, we have so much work that we need to give back. And this is when Azza came up with the idea that it was important to create a jewelry school back home. So we opened our first jewelry school. It's called Azza Fahmy Design Studio. It's the first of its kind in the Middle East, in collaboration with Alchemia in Florence, my school actually. And we want to put the Middle East on the map as a jewelry hub. The Middle East, for the last 15 years, has become a fashion hub. Now, when you go to Paris, when you go to London, when you go to Milan, and you say, I'm a fashion designer from the Middle East, doors do open. But that door opened because of the likes of people like Elie Saab and so many other designers. I'm sure they had a lot more challenge.
Of course.
Because there wasn't anyone before them. So we're trying to do the same thing, but with jewelry. We tried to enter the market in the UK in 2003, and no one would take our meeting. And not because we didn't have the right kind of work or they didn't like it. It's because they heard Egypt, Middle East, never heard of you, jewelry-wise. But it took us a lot of persistence, and this is actually how we got into collaborations. Because we thought, right, how do we approach a market that, you go to the department stores and you say, I would love to see you. They said, well, are you covered in any publications? Before they even see your work, and you say, no. Okay, so we go to the publications and we say, can you cover us? And they say, well, are you in any department stores? And we say, no. So it was just like we were stuck in a loop. And that's when my sister Fatma came up with the idea of collaborating with a fashion designer. So our first collaboration was in 2007 with Julian McDonald, which, again, it goes back to partnership. We never do one collaboration. We're always doing several collaborations because we get along with them and it works beautifully. But it was, for me as a designer, for me as a designer, it completely expands how I think in terms of design, because obviously I'm used to designing super small pieces. Then you get the opportunity to design something for the catwalk, and it's something that has to be visible from 100 meters or 200 meters. So it's a whole new challenge on its own. But then it gives you that feedback on the market, and you kind of help each other out. So we were huge in the Middle East. He was huge in London. How can we both help each other? And then from Julian McDonald, we move on to Preen by Thornton Bergese. We did a couple of seasons with them. Then we moved on to Matthew Williamson for 3 seasons, and that went beautifully. And for us, it's not even just the fashion association. We've also done collaborations with something like the British Museum, where they would open their archives of upcoming exhibitions, and we would look at things and try and turn it into jewelry. And of course, it's incredible because you're seeing pieces that are 3,000 years old and 4,000 years old, and they're this big, and they're trunks and cloths and materials, and you're trying to turn it into pieces of jewelry. But this is pretty much what we've been working on.
That's great. Now, as I'm sure you've seen behind me, supermodels, royalty and pop stars have all worn Azza Fahmy. What impact has working with celebrities had on the brand? What impact has working with celebrities had on the brand? Have you found that working with celebrities has raised the profile of the brand?
Of course. It's fascinating when someone you watch and someone you like. I mean, the first time Rihanna wore us, I was screaming in the office. There's no denying that. But I think it's going back to choosing the right person that represents the brand. So it's not just choosing a celebrity because she's a celebrity. There's loads of people out there that I wouldn't approach. And not because she's good or bad, it's just I don't see her as a fit. So we've always worked with people that we felt that really fell in love with the jewelry. But of course, naturally, celebrities, social media influencers, bloggers, all these people, of course, have an impact on your brand. It's the recognition that you get that you're doing something right, I guess, and if they love it, especially if it's growing organically.
Have you noticed it translates to sales?
Yes, for sure.
Considerably?
Yes, for sure. You would. It does a direct impact, to be honest. I think if it's the right person for the brand, I think, and if people especially actually believe that this has worked organically, it just doesn't feel like you've went and paid that celebrity and she's just posting it just for you to get like 20,000 likes. We found that actually doesn't work. We found that when we do something like exhibitions and events and things like that, it's much classier and more important for us in terms of sales, that we found that we have a lot more interaction when we have a more boutique kind of event than rather have 4,000 people who all have millions of followers, but then actually no one cares. Because they actually found that with the macro influencers, which is pretty much anything above 150,000 followers, the number of people interested in whatever it is that they're saying doesn't exceed the 1 or 2%. So a lot of people are just following them because they want to see what the fuss is about. So it's much more important to have, like I said, a genuine organic growth.
We've talked about giving back. Another thing that's really important to the brand is sustainability. Tell us more about that.
So we're not just a jewelry brand. We call ourselves, or we consider ourselves, an art brand. And it's not just a recent thing. We've always done other things. But our latest project is it's with a foundation called, not foundation, with a company called Calm Build. And they're building solar panels all over Egypt. And I think they're starting Egypt and then probably taking their model elsewhere. But we believe that designs have to be involved in everything. Solar panels are really ugly. And it is the future. So I really cannot comprehend why has no one thought of designing beautiful solar panels. If you think about the mobile phones, pre-iPhone, no other company actually did covers. It was pretty much the regular Nokia, Samsung, all of that, and they had particular shapes. But no one actually thought of giving it a color. It was the iPhone when they did the phone, and then someone said, well, why don't we do the cover like it has painting or a face or a saying or something, and then it literally went viral and everyone wanted to change the cover. It's the same with having solar panels. It's just we thought of integrating design with sustainability and with the environment. So there's a building dedicated to my mother in Salah Hashish, and it took everything from the Egyptian and Islamic and Middle Eastern heritage, and they built a sustainable building that depends on the sunlight to provide for electricity. And they've moved on to design these solar panels, which all have motifs coming from previous works and new motifs. And it's like whenever the sun comes in, it reflects in a beautiful way that adds to your house instead of making it really ugly. And they're moving on to a massive big project where basically they're designing solar panels that can fit every home in Egypt, basically, but you have something that aesthetically looks beautiful at your house rather than just have that ugly stain thing. And I think it's very important for brands to work on sustainable energy because, as I'm sure you know, with everything that's going on in the world, there is a social responsibility for brands to raise awareness about ethical everything, not just whether it's fashion, whether it's giving back, and you kind of have to be environmentally conscious. So I'm very proud to have worked on this project.
So you should be. Now, what is the next chapter going to be in the Azza Fahmy story?
So many things. We're working on a lot of upcoming projects. I think we're always on the go. Like we actually don't have a minute to pause and to breathe. We're working on so many collections that will be released in the coming season. We're working more with the community, so we're doing vocational trainings, and we're actually doing things in Dubai and in Bahrain and in Qatar. And because, unfortunately, as as an industry, the jewelry business is dying. It's all turning towards machine, and no one's interested in keeping the handcraft. And our entire industry is built on handcraft. It's a school on its own. So we're actually working to create a school where we teach jewelry, just jewelry making, not just design. And it will be targeted to create a lot of craftsmen that can eventually work in other factories to help boost the jewelry industry in the Middle East. So this is what we're currently working on.
Now, supporting the next generation is important to you. What would be your message for young designers today?
Be true to yourself and have a lot of passion. I could understand how difficult it is to start something new. Especially families in the Middle East will have a tendency to join family businesses. Most of my friends studied for 4 years, something that they absolutely hate. And then when they hit their 30s, they just said, we have no idea what we're doing. I want to do music. I want to do film. I want to become an instructor. And I think if you listen to your heart, and you know even from day one that this is not what you want to do, follow that. And funnily enough, yesterday I was sitting with a young man who was 16 years old who is finishing his IB, and he was telling me, I'm so drawn to art, but I think I'm just going to join business because I think that's more lucrative. And I thought that was the most insane statement that I've ever heard. And the only thing I kept telling him was, stop fussing about money. Stop worrying about money. Money will come when you're doing something that you're passionate about. And I think if you love your job, that's a lot of I've read that somewhere. If you love your job, that's happiness. But if you're passionate and you do what you love, that's freedom. And I really do believe that.
Now, I could talk to you all night, as you know, but there are lots of people here, and I'm sure they've got questions for you. Does anyone have any questions for Amina?
Hi.
Oh, one over here. Do we have a mic? Here we go.
Hi. Hello. Hi.
Hi.
First of all, I'm a big fan of your work.
Thank you.
I'm very happy to be here. I wanted to ask, because you said that Azza Fahmy is a brand, do you ever think that the brand would evolve to, for example, clothes, bags, or do you think that the brand will stick to jewelry strictly?
I would love to do a bag collaboration any day. If you have someone in mind, I'm there. No, I think, like I said, we think of ourselves as an art hub. So my mother's background is actually interior decorating. So we would love to venture into other things, but not just for the sake of it's money and it can bring us money, if it's actually something that we love. My jewelry degree is in jewelry design and silversmithing, so I actually studied for 4 years how to make spoons and knives. So I would love to do that, but that is an entirely different operation. So I think in the near future, and we're starting slowly to do that, like with something like Carm Build, because it's a massive project. But I think we're going to start, I think one of our dreams, which we've had for 10 years, is to have the Azza Fahmy boutique. And my mother's been dreaming about it for the last 10 years. My mother's a very homey person. She loves to do her own cooked jam and bread. She just wants to hotel. She actually cook for people. That's all she wants to do. So I think we'll be venturing into more other things other than jewelry for sure.
Oh, another question over here. There's one over here. I've seen you as well, don't worry.
So you said that necklace took 10 years to make?
No, it took 10 years in research.
What do you mean by the research? What is the process to that, the timeline?
So seeing that we're an Egyptian brand, it was very intimidating for us to create a pharaonic jewelry, especially that all the major brands have done that at one point in their life. So we wanted to do it the right way. So we actually brought a very strong team of Egyptologists from the British Museum and from Christie's in London and from the Egyptian Museum. And we went around pretty much every single temple there is in Egypt to read all the stories that are on the temples in Egypt. And that took about 3 to 4 years just to finish all the temples and write everything down. And then we sat together for another continued discussion on how will we present this collection. because if we present it in the normal way, then I have not done anything new. I've just presented it how it would be. And the pharaohs were perfect, so we had to remain perfect within. You know that when we launched this, we had so many Egyptologists actually go, and they all wrote us notes saying there isn't a single centimeter that's off in terms of proportion. And then we got into the phase of how do we bring this collection to everyone? How do we see it? Do we see it modern? Do we see it ethnic? Do we see it big, small, and so on? And we were very scared because if you think of Egyptian jewelry, everyone used to shy away from it. They would think of it as the tourist who came to Cairo and just wanted a souvenir. And my mother, of course, couldn't stop talking about it for 8 years. And everyone, whenever she'd say, oh, do the pharaonic collection, they all go, oof. And it wasn't up until we launched it. We had people coming up to us and saying, you've managed, after 5,000 years, to get Egyptian and Arab women to wear Egyptian jewelry again. And that was the biggest compliment that anyone had ever given us. Thank you.
Wow.
She wanted to ask a
Let's have a
question.
minute. It's okay. It's okay. Last question over here. Oh my goodness, there's more. We should do more.
Hi.
Hi.
Big fan over here.
Thank you.
Wowed by your collection. I mean, it's amazing. I love
Thank you.
history. I love everything about Asian world. Also, I'm a big fan of Game of Thrones.
Wasn't expecting that.
We all are.
Yeah. So, if any of you watched that epic series that is still on, you might see that there's the work that they've done on costumes and the jewelry is breathtaking.
I know.
It's amazing. And as far as unfortunately, I don't remember now. I cannot recall the name of the jewelry designer. He launched his own line, the Khalisi jewelry,
Oh, yeah.
which is also wow.
I
mean,
looked that up for
you
sure.
should see it. It's dangerous to wear this necklace on your neck because it can just perforate your artery, but it's
Great.
totally worth it, So would you be thinking into expanding into, I don't know, maybe Hollywood is big, but hey, sky's the limit, why not? Into this kind of the jewelry, because I think now people watch TV and TV series more, and there's more money in it, and there's more art in it rather than before. At least that's what I see.
See, I have 3 people smiling here because this has been our dream.
Oh, wow.
So we've actually worked on a lot of movies, and we've worked on a lot of theater. It's extremely interesting for us. There was a movie that was supposed to be done about Cleopatra back a couple of years ago, but the directors decided to go in a different direction and do Avatar. So he was meant to do Cleopatra.
Quite a direction change there.
Quite the direction. I'm glad he kind of did because I love that movie as well. But I think it's been my dream because, believe it or not, all the historical movies that are done, the jewelry is completely off. Completely. Troy used Indian jewelry. It's not even Greek. So it looks beautiful, but it's not historic or it's not true to its age.
Authentic.
It's not authentic. And because my mother was actually awarded the doctorate honorary title because of her extensive research in jewelry. So for us, it's a dream to work on a massive Hollywood production, but it's going back to the right one. Thank you.
Do I have time for a couple more questions?
I think the lady
Yes?
over here. Yes.
Or one more question. Go on and
And the
choose.
gentleman behind.
Can we
also
have 2 more questions? Make them quick.
I just want to ask if you have thought about going into other lines in fashion, like going to haute couture or footwear or something else?
An opportunity has not presented itself. If it had, we would have considered it for sure, but nothing came about.
Okay. Thank you. Right. Last one. Over here.
I'm really a big fan of Azza Fahmy designs.
Thank you.
My question is, I see in Cairo there is a lot of small jewelers who's copying your designs, and people are buying it because it's maybe more affordable. So I don't know if you think about doing an affordable line with your designs,
Good
or
question.
It's a very
not,
important question, actually.
Great question.
make it more for the
It's-
public.
The amount of effort that goes into our jewelry is just
Of course, it's
madness.
impeccable.
It's not about the material. It took us a good 30 years to change the perception of Middle Eastern and Egyptian women. Because if you think of the Middle Eastern market, we used to buy jewelry by weight. So you would go to your local jeweler, you put that and just tell you 50 grams and that's it. Or else, a different social class would buy only Western jewelry. So if you think about what we've done, we've actually managed to change people who are only interested in wearing Western jewelry to wear a brand that is coming from the Middle East that doesn't handle it by weight. So we do have what we call an entry level to our brand, and we'll always have that. We're always keen on doing that. But today, affordable is a very big word, because my affordable can be different from your affordable, different from her affordable. But it has become very difficult for us to sustain a particular price point, because my least amount of piece will take almost 25 people to work on and 2 years. So that has a value. And to me, we're selling art. I am no longer interested in saying, someone asks, how much silver does it have, or how much gold does it have? I don't know. Someone in the back of the room does, but to me, it's you either fall in love with it or you don't.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Now, I'm sure you'd all love to join me in thanking Amina Ghali for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Amina and I would like to thank you all for
Thank you so
joining
much,
us.
Allison, for this, and thank you all for coming and for joining and for listening.
And we hope you've been inspired. Thank you so much.